All right, it is time. Now, for session three today, we're going to do something essential, something very important for well, all apps, but Next.js apps specifically, واللي هي uh, fetching data and creating backend routes. One of the biggest, well, the most important functionalities to Next.js is the ability to create backend routes. One second. What I mean by backend routes, هما the same kind of routes that we know of that we can create with, for example, frameworks like Express.js or Nest.js, things like that, or frameworks like that. So the fact that we can create them using, well, the same framework that we use in order to build the front end, this is huge in terms of developer experience because we don't have to spend time, effort, resources uh, on getting our needs accomplished. Improving developer experience, of course, it's important. May In case, for example, you think, hey, I'm a super developer, I'm a 10x developer كما هذا المصطلح انتشر at a certain time. I can do everything. I don't mind creating new or using other frameworks or creating other repositories, etc., projects, etc., in order to accomplish this. Then consider the other aspects. First of all, time, because you don't have all the time in the world. Whether you are working on something personal, يعني you own the product, let's say, whether you own the project, or you're working for a company or someone else, basically. In both cases, you don't have time. You don't have time to waste parce que every minute or every hour that you are late in shipping your product is going to be time wasted or not time wasted, but money wasted essentially. Yeah, and opportunity cost basically. So for you, if you're working with someone else, if you waste time, that could be time you could be using actually doing something important, like adding functionalities or even just uh, learning new skills and anything you can think of. Instead, you choose it to uh, to do the hard work of just شغل مخشن راسك you create things that don't need or you create things that don't need to be created. Well, this is just in case someone has any doubt about how important it is to be able to save time developing backend routes. Now, the second benefit to using full stack Next.js is resources. Since you don't have to deploy two servers, واحد for the front end, واحد for the back end, this saves you a lot of money, basically. One step, well, let's think about it actually. When it comes to the backend needs to be a dedicated server running 24/7. And here most frameworks work this way. So you would have, let's say, a Node.js based framework. What it is here, like we kind of mentioned here, it's like a function. Imagine it like a function running 24/7. We're listening to requests. Whenever a request comes in, we get هذيك الفانكشن شغل processes it, does whatever needs to be done, or returns a response. Uh, in order to of course create a product that can be usable by actual users, we need to have a product or we need to have a server that is always running حاجة الأولى. We can't have زعما even 1 hour of downtime زعما في النهار or something like that is unacceptable. How do we assure that? We need to build or use many tools, a stack of tools on top of it to assure 99% availability. We need to write error handling code. We need to write all kinds of error boundaries. We need to write analytics. We need to write what's it called? There is some special tooling that tells you either the server tag is down, or there are other tools, let's say, tools that when your server does go down, it does what's called a graceful restart or something. I don't remember the exact word. A graceful restart, right? What that means is basically كي server tag instead of you manually يعني going in ورئيس like 3 تاع الصباح instead of you coming in or refreshing or not refreshing may restarting your server it does it automatically. All of this is needs to be set up. But imagine instead we don't do هذه الفلسفي تاع philosophy تاع a server running 24/7. What if this server only runs when it is needed? يعني when a person makes a request, then your server is birthed, it is spawned, let's say, it fulfills the request, but it just goes back to sleep or it gets destroyed. This is the concept that Next.js operates with. So basically, I won't give you too many details because I want to get to the code. We shall continue where we left off logically. Uh, if you have this kind of philosophy, you have a server where you have functions, basically, like we said, servers are functions. If you have a function that is only actual spin up, well, actual that only comes alive when it is needed, then you're able to do a very interesting thing. واللي هي distributed what's it called? Uh, Distributed computing, let's call it. Uh, I don't know if you've heard of the term serverless functions. A serverless function is a function اللي هي basically a server. Uh-huh. It's a server that doesn't require a server. يعني it doesn't require server running 24/7, and so that allows it to be deployed everywhere. When we talk about big um, providers to computing like Amazon AWS, Amazon Web Services ولا Azure تاع Microsoft, they have servers everywhere. They have servers in Europe, in like North Africa, Asia, it's USA. Uh, if you have a single backend server running only one place, like for example Europe, people from the US, in order to access your Europe server, they will add a lot of time باش هذيك request تلحق لهذاك السيرفر وتولي even if your server is very fast. If we could have multiple deployments everywhere, this is resolved. Well, there are multiple benefits, and there are many benefits to using Next.js, a Next.js backend. So we should use it. Now, how do we use it? This is what we're going to learn today. So as always, I'm going to jump straight to the code um, and share my screen. Screen one, go live. Okay. Can you see it? Usually it works flawlessly. May as always, if it froze, let me know. Okay. This is the page that we created. Just a refresher. It shows us a random book every time we refresh. We made it so that we refresh and we still keep the state that lives inside, like that. So we are getting a new book. Okay, now let's bring up our code. Here it is. I will hide this for now. And full screen. Okay, today, here's the timeline for today or session next time. So session 3, which is today, or session 4, which is in 2 days. يعني بعد غدوة. Duma, we're going to do data fetching. We're going to do backend routes. Data fetching, fetching data basically راح نديروها في server components وفي client components. We're going to do backend routes. Don't read this for now. We're going to do backend routes, which are Next.js, the way we build a backend route in Next.js. Then in session 4, this is will be where we will be upgrading our backend routes to handle mutating data. Why? Because the philosophy is different. Philosophy is different. The way you get data versus the way you update it, it is different. So we're leaving it for session 4 because of time constraints. Last time we went over an hour and a half, we got into 2 hours. I'd like to keep it short today or keep it manageable. Then when we start mutating data, we are doing more complex apps, we're going to be talking about global state because it's something اللي نخدموا بها بزاف في React. نخدموا بها بزاف في React. Okay, so when we talk about fetching data, I just want to point out a little bug for you, which maybe you noticed, well, maybe not. Okay, so the problem, the very big problem, well, let me read this first. We're facing a big problem here, meaning in our app, we're not really fetching data. We checked the network tab when we were uh, building the app. I told you that we're not fetching data. So when we looked at it, there's no data coming in. There is just a bunch of JavaScript scribbled something was being sent. So when we inspected it, we couldn't find any data. Just code that is hardly readable, or sometimes uh, not viewable at all. So the thing is, we're just statically rendering a page on the server وبعدها نبعثوها للكلاينت تاعنا. What that means is for our app, this one, every time we click here, we are actually doing a refresh. We are refreshing the page. الفرق بين الريفرش تاع البراوزر وتاع تاع Next.js basically ماهوش كبير بزاف. البراوزر every time you refresh يقول باللي شغل يحسب في باله زعما البراوزر يحسب في باله باللي it's going to a completely different server to a completely different website so it just uh, refreshes everything شغل يمحي كامل لا ميموار تاعو و لا ميموار تاعو واش معناتها شغل يمحي all the information that it has about the current website except for cookies of course but we don't care about that cookies مخبيين فيه somewhere else we don't care about that for now بصح يمحي everything uh, and then it asks for it again from the server it asks for هذاك الدومين و gets any data و shows it on screen Next.js the way it does a refresh على باله ولا it knows باللي راهو في نفس راهو في نفس السيت ما راحش نبدلوا السيت كي نديروا اللينكس تاع Next.js اللي يمدوهم لنا it's a component اللي يمدوه لنا يدير شغل غير internal routing within the same website تسمى يقول باللي okay كاين some stuff that I can keep for example old styles that I have maybe I can reuse them so I'm going to keep them the structure تاع البيج like HTML the title, meta tags, etc. I can keep them. So what it does here, it uses React because Next.js is React even on the backend, يعني even on the server. وش يدير؟ React عنده a DOM tree, document object model tree, React DOM. Just let's try to get a representation of it. No, something simpler. Like, let's say it like this. وش هذه الدوم tree هي virtual DOM actually it's better to call it a virtual DOM parce que any website has a DOM a virtual DOM هي في لا ميموار تاع React library it keeps a version of your website representation تاع every element for example الروت element الأول كامل هو HTML tag بعد كاين title tag ولا title element والbody element داخل title element كاين for example link كاين title كاين واحد اخرين في البادي كاين h1 key divs etc so when Next.js does a refresh uh, it gets this object we can if we شغل نخربوا بزاف نخربوا مليح مع React, maybe we can even print it to save it to memory و stuff like that يعني personally. مي وش يدير هي يجيب يجيب يطلب من السيرفر يبعث له هذا الاوبجكت تاع الفيرتشوال دوم again هذه تشري يبعثها له again. والكلاينت تاعنا وش يدير يكومباري غير الحوايج اللي تبدلوا، يلقى بلي ال HTML تاج ما تبدلتش، يلقى بلي الديف ما تبدلش وال H1 ما تبدلش etc. بصح in this way we are still getting elements, you know, we're still getting so many elements, we're still getting je sais pas what's it called, yeah, we're still getting HTML. Yes, here's the thing. We are getting HTML, not data. معناتها if I try to access من بعد count ولا any kind of information available on screen هنا في our current application, we can't do it after the fact يعني من بعد باش نمانيبيليوها ولا باسكو راهي تكزيستي غير في ال HTML تاعنا، ما عنديش زعما object اللي فيه هذا الداتا كيما نديرو normal API request. In order to illustrate this point very well نبينوها visually هكذا so we understand. If we go to our page, let's go to uh, the page basically. هنا we have this book info اللي هي هذا المربع ولا المستطيل this div, this one, and I am going to make multiple copies of it. Let's just make 3 باش تكون سهلة. Now, if I click refresh, every one of them will be refreshed to be different. They always get a new different one. Like boom, boom, different. Each individual one gets a different one, which is okay because عندنا one button اللي gets new books for everything. So you can, for example, I want to keep these two. فور اكزومبل هذا نقولوا باللي هذه الاب راني حاب بها راني حاب بها نعرف الكتابات اللي نقراهم بيرسونالي. تسمى واش ندير اي ريفرش من بعد افري تايم اي نلقى كتاب اللي يعجبني نخليه زعما هذا Wuthering Heights I like it تسمى I will keep it. هذا الكتاب الدوزيام I don't like it تسمى I will refresh it. بصح I want to keep the first one. Troisième I don't like it refresh بصح هادو الزوج نخليهم par exemple. I can't do this right now. There is with what we learned so far there is no way to do it. هذه this way this refreshes the whole page. Well, so how do we do that? Well, it's obvious. We use the thing that we already know اللي هي fetching data. We want to fetch data. So how do we do that? We need to get them from our basically database, right? We need to get a new book from our database. So our books database اللي هي دوكا for now it's just an object. بصح ما يهمش هذا الاوبجكت مانيش حاب هذا الاوبجكت اللي فيه ولا array اللي فيه كامل البوكس تاعي مانيش حاب نبعثو للكلاينت، مانيش حاب نبعثو للبراوزر ومن بعد يشوف كامل الكتابات وكابابل يشوف sensitive information راني مخبيها هنا اللي نورمالمون ما يشوفهاش. So what do I do? I need to create a backend route. We talked about how Next.js has the ability to do that. So let's do that. First of all, let's look at, well, we can look at the documentation on how to create backend routes because I want you to get comfortable. Documentation تولي ديما زعما easy reference that you go to always. أنا واش راني نحوس راهم دايرينها هنا data fetching, caching and revalidating. Okay. هنا كاين titles. There are 4 ways you can fetch data. أنا نحوس on the server no. دوكا راني نحوس on the client maybe. Actually, should we get it on the server ولا on the client? Well, حنا رانا حابين ال easiest way. If we look at our page, the easiest way. Right now, هذا البوك انفو موديول ولا كومبوننت، هذا البوك انفو كومبوننت هو اللي راهو يدير الداتا فيتشينغ هنا، راهو يجيب من الباز دوني which is okay. راهو ياكسيدي ديريكتومون للباز دوني تاعي. I will call it باز دوني باسكو it's okay. باسكو it's a server component it runs غير في السيرفر. تسمى هذا الجافا سكريبت هذا it will only run في السيرفر تاعي. I don't worry about that. ما راحش يلحق للكلاينت تاعي. واش راح يلحق للكلاينت تاعي؟ راح يلحقوا غير هذا ال HTML اللي يكون ديجا محطوط فيه كلش، فيه details as a string. All of these will be strings. This will be an image. So I am safe. مي إذا راني حاب شغل نكريت كشما let's call it a function هنا in order to refresh just this specific book, refresh this book. الباتن الآخر نبدل اسمه real quick، اسمه navigate في بلاصة ما get new book نسميه refresh all the books, all books. Let's just do that. So refresh this book. What can I do? Is there a way we can achieve هذه الفانكشناليتي؟ وش راني حابه يبدل برك هذا البوك بصح. we talked about اللي إذا راني حاب فانكشناليتي كيما state كيما interactivity ولا state ولا أي حاجة اللي دايناميك، أي حاجة اللي دايناميك باسكو دوكا ولينا في حاجة دايناميك. وش هي الحاجة الدايناميك؟ حاجة اللي تتبدل تتبدل سواء every time I visit it واللي هي الحاجة تتحقق مع هذا الكومبوننت كيما راه. من ثاني تتبدل بالاكشنز تاع اليوزر كي يكليكي الباتن هذا اليوزر راني حابها تتبدل. So how do I achieve that? I would need to use state يعني I would need to use state. So I would need to turn this into a client component because otherwise it will give me an error if I try to put this const use the book. We already know this, man. Let's just do it. It will give us a error. The function is it just gives us a random number. ماهيش حاجة تخوف. Get generate random number in range 0 to book's length minus 1. Book. Okay, it doesn't give me an error هنا. مي هنايا you're importing a component that needs use state. It only works in a client component, but none of its parents are marked with use client. So they are server components by default. تما واش هو حاب يقول لي باللي هذا راهو server components the simplest يعني explanation باسكو هما زادوا عقدوها. هذا it's a server component ومادام كامل its parents are server components by default باسكو Next.js by default makes everything a server component, then it's not going to work. So we just turn it into a client component, use client, and it works. I mean, we're getting two errors, of course, and it's still not working باسكو مانيش رابط هذا البutton. Const refresh book. It does a set book with a new random book. Okay. And then on click, refresh book. I'm refreshing the book. Okay, we got our functionality working. That's great. But we were getting an error دوكا اختفى. هذا error كما قلت لكم prop alt ماهوش error اللي نحوسوا عليه actually it's just for functionality. دوكا مازال عاود ولا. Bon, text content does not match server rendered HTML. Let's check why. Bon, Hisham, you asked for link of the repo. Bon, ما حبيتش نبعثو باسكو في البوينت البوان اللي حبينا اللي حبسنا فيه كنا دايرين حاجة اللي نورمالمون شغل it's a hack. It's not the proper way to fetch data. May we used it just to explain شغل server components, client components, some function باسكو هذا وين كنا بدينا في Next.js. We explained project structure, all of that. So I didn't want to share it باش ما تدوش ليدي بلي that's the way a component should be built basically. But I will be sharing it since we're back to on track using actual normal code. Okay. وزكي yeah that's true. كي يكون البارون تاعنا client rendered كامل children ولا كامل الكومبوننتس اللي يجوا تحته ولا اللي يخدم بيهم لازم يكونوا client rendered as well. Uh, just because شغل it's logical, you know. Okay. What am I looking at? Now it's راهي تمشي راهو يجينا error text content does not match server rendered HTML. Let's read this. While rendering your application, there was a difference between the React tree that was pre-rendered from the server and the React tree that was rendered during the first render in the browser. Okay, hydration is when React converts the pre-rendered HTML from the server into a fully interactive application. So the way ولا الاكسبليكاسيون تاع الايرور اللي جانا هو Next.js يبني renders it builds it renders الكومبوننتس كامل الكومبوننتس تاعنا every time at different times مي for الحاجة اللي يهمنا دوكا هي every time we visit هذا اللينك it will send us HTML اللي واجد باسكو it's faster you know if I send you غير HTML في بلاصة ما نبعث لك الجافا سكريبت تاع رياكت من بعد انت دير البيلد ريندرينغ هذاك وتجيب الداتا ومن بعد ترندري وعلاش ما نديرش هذيك الخدمه نديرها في البراوزر any data you need مع الاول I will fetch it انا myself باسكو it's faster ونبعث لك غير HTML تسمى it's easy faster to load هذا وش يدير مي في الكود تاعنا هنا في هذا اليوز ستيت where we have this piece of code اللي هي books generated random number in range اللي دير هذيك الخدمة again راح يجيب من السيرفر هذا راح يجيب البوكس كامل من السيرفر من بعد تعاود كي يلودي الكومبوننت راح يدير هذه الخدمة راح يجيب كامل البوكس like I said وتخير واحد منهم at random وهكذا راهم يجونا دو فيرسيون راهي الفيرسيون اللي راهي تجينا من السيرفر اللي فيها HTML واجد راهي تترندرا مع كونتنت اللي راه واجد ديجا يكون فيه بوك اللي يكون راندوم زعما نقولوا بوك ات راندوم من بعد كي يلحق الكومبوننت اللي هي انا كي يلحق الجافا سكريبت اللي يبعث السيرفر راهو يعاود يدير هذيك الخدمه كامل او يعاود يدير الخدمه ويمد لي زعما راندوم بوك بي وهنا راهو يصرى المشكله هذا السيرفر راهو يقول باللي ومن بعد الكومبوننت بروحه ولا الكلاينت راهو يقول باللي بي احنا واش رانا حابين هي اذا السيرفر ديجا بعث لنا HTML واجد ما نحتاجوش نعاودو نديرو API ريكويست ما نحتاجوش نقولوا ما نحتاجوش نديرو API ريكويست وعلاش انا نعاود ندير ريكويست للديتا اللي راهي واجده ديجا عندي هذيك الاي بي اي ريكويست انا ديجا نحتاج نديرها غير كي حاب اليوزر يجيب another new book مي هنا لازم نهضروا ديجا على a completely other problem اللي هي we are using الباز دوني ديريكتومون معناتها الباز دوني راهي تكزيستي عند الكلاينت راهو يجيبها بها بالسيكريتس تاعها جو سي با كوا all 10 items ايماجينيو لو بعثت له كاش ما مود باس تاع يوزرز تاوعي or something like that completely unacceptable هنا كاين في Next.js واحد سبيشال كومبوننت اسمه server only هذا السيرفر only component you use it to mark الحوايج يعني mark them set them apart je sais pas you set apart الحوايج that you only want to be used on the server سواء objects سواء components no ماشي components mais سواء server objects سواء data like I said ولا functions so I just go to my books here are my books let me clean this up like this نروح to my books بون الحاجة الأولى نستعليها bien sûr npm install server only it's installed and I do import server only okay دوكا مازال ما بدلت والو normalement I get an error yes you are importing راك تسيي تخدم بحاجه اللي تكزيستي اللي لازم ما تخدمش بها في الكلاينت. هذه يعاونك بها برك الباندلر الكومبايلر الباندلر باش you don't make a mistake. Right, so let's quickly just fix the error. How do we fix it? كيما قلنا باللي ماناش حابين الكومبوننت هذا يدير الدوبل ترافاي. راني حابو الخطرة الأولى ذات gets its data يجيبها واجدة ويجيب غير HTML وما يزيدش يدير الدوبل ترافاي. ومن بعد غير when the user wants new data ثم اللي يجيب new data ويحطها في الستيت تاعي. تسمى I need to pass a prop obviously ماشي obviously وي prop باسكو البارنت تاع هذا الكومبوننت راهو يترندرها في السيرفر. تما هنا نقدر ندير الريكوست تاعي نورمال const books and the way we do this is books generate random number. هذه الفانكشن نقدر نديها نحطها هنا ولا نقدر نحطها في فيشي وحده اسمه shared components ولا حاجه كيما هكذا باش تكون مور كلير. نقدر نحطها هنا نورمال نديرها برك exported export const. اوكي هنا I import the books books. I changed the name of this نسميها book واحد. اوكي now في هذا الكومبوننت وين راه book نحي هذو الزوج. هنا نحوس نفوت البوك in this way book. بون هذا التيب تايب نقدر نخدم به مالغري راهو ماركت سيرفر اونلي جاست باسكو تايب سكريبت. من بعد هذا الكود تاع تايب سكريبت مادام ما يكزيستيش في جافا سكريبت والبراوزر تاعي اونلي رانز جافا سكريبت تسمى تايب سكريبت كود needs to be transpiled ولا compiled into JavaScript. since TypeScript does not exist within JavaScript يعني التايبس هذو غير حاجه اللي شغل فليفر يعاونوك برك راح ينحيها الكومبايلر. تسمى اتس اوكي يعتبر باللي ما خدمت حتى حاجه. تسمى يعاونك غير في الكود اديتور تاعك. اوكي دوبليكيت واسمو initial load نسموه initial load book هكذا. هذا معناها initial load book راح يخدم بها غير في السيرفر. initial load book بوم ندير له تايب طري بيان ملا غير في الريفرش بوك راني حاب نخدم بهذه بون ما نديرش بوكس باسكو اجان مانيش حاب نخدم بهو اسمو راح يجيني ايرور. تسمى فور ناو نحيها باسكو باش نحلوها لازم لنا باك اند راوت لازم نجيبو داتا من باك اند راوت. اوكي مي فور ناو اسكو we are getting what we wanted. هنا نحطو initial load book which is our book. We will be getting let's make multiple books book. Wow. It's working. We're getting the same book. وعلاش باسكو of course we're using the same property. تما سواء نقدروا نديروا book 1 book 2 book 3 ولا easier نجيبوا غير هذا الكود ونحطوه داخل each one هنا. كاين different ways to resolve these kinds of problems and I'm just taking the easiest route. I refresh different books هذو تعاودوا باسكو at random again random. Things fall apart, Wuthering Heights and The Great Gatsby 3 random books. When I refresh them they don't work باسكو مازال ما خدمتش الفانكشناليتي. اوكي بصح تعلمنا حاجه which هذه البروسيس تاع initial load book or this one I don't get what you mean which process يعني. ما تعلمنا حاجة مهمة سيكو هنا this component turned into from a server component to a client component باسكو with time when our application changed تبدل الرول تاعو تبدل الفانكشناليتي تاعو which is completely normal و expected. ماشي لازم first time حاجة تكريها as a server component تبقى server component ولا حاجة تكريها client component تبقى client component. The client component to server components both grow هكذا they mutate the application تاعك grows like this may always keep in mind باللي الحاجة اللي راك حابها تكون client is usually less efficient يعني bon less efficient يعني moins performant تسمى you want it to be at the bottom غير الحاجة exactly اللي تسحق تكون تسحق تكون client that it needs to run at in the client soit parce que it needs interactivity زعما event listeners all of that soit parce que it needs what's it called interactivity ولا dynamic يعني تجيب data تاعها فترات update الداتا تاعها etc. ouais اوكي تسمى عندي هذايا وهذايا بون اسكو هذه needs to be a manual process هنا وش معناتها manual process it's not هنا ماهيش complex راني برك نكري since I have uh, different book info it's almost like I am doing this I am getting get random sub array basically a more complex تقدر نقولوا automatic way to resolve this would be get sub array random sub array from array and then I create get random sub array عندي ال original array وعندي size تاع ال sub array right. okay uh, I have a Copilot so I don't need to think about these things too much وش راهو يدير هنايا هي راهو يجيب الاري تاعي راهو يدير له سورت بصح السورت الكونديشن تاعها سورت موالف تجيك سواء تصاعدي سواء تنازلي with some condition in my case راني نديرها randomly تسمى at random هادو اللي يتخلطوا تسمى ومن بعد راني نجيب الفيرست اكس ايتمز بعد هذه واش نقدر ندير لها I can still write valid شغل جافا سكريبت كود get random sub array books 3 map بعد yeah for each item I create a component for it this should work properly right. It's working this error more HTML error well, redirect error boundary I don't really understand it I should google it بصح ما يأثرش على الظهر تاعنا it's not because of something we did probably I'm missing some kind of package or something like that when some package is out of date okay it's working mais شغل be careful not to كيفاش يقولوا وش هو المصطلح bike shedding ouais كاين واحد المصطلح شباب في since we're developers we're programmers we are likely to fall into it bike shedding اللي هي البروسيس of over engineering certain things. For example, well, this is a funny example زعما a nuclear reactor plant واللي هي حاجة very complex والناس قادر يموتوا ال technical discussion تاعها it took 2 minutes يعني 2.5 minutes ولا let's say 2 hours I don't know it took 2 minutes بينما a bike shed شغل no matter how badly you build it it's still شغل غير مربع هكذا ولا كيما نبنوا حنا ديار في الجزائر مكعب هكذا if you get it wrong no one dies no one gets hurt mid discussion تاعها technical discussion of how we make it is 45 minutes so for something as simple as هذه الحاجة it can be manual it doesn't need to be over engineered in fact if it is manual that's smarter حاجة كيما هكذا who would read this bon if we have a large array كيما par exemple 7 items ولا حاجة كيما هكذا باش ما نعاودوش روحنا sure mais since we have only 3 items par exemple there is no need to over engineer it okay so now we need to create a backend routes in order to allow for هذه الفانكشناليتي باش نريفرشيو a certain book whenever we need it right how much time do we have to do this 40 minutes okay all right let's get started then first things started calling default practice in Next.js is this approach of handling users' interactions on the server side by calling the API the default practice in Next.js. Bon, I think what you mean here is when we click this, we handle we get the data from the server side. Is this يعني, am I understanding it correctly? Yeah. Yeah, it is the default way parce que the concept that we need to get data from a data store is still the same. ما عندناش الداتا تاعنا في الكلاينت، الداتا تاعنا راهي تكزيستي في باز دوني، و in order to get it from that base données we have to be authenticated parce que our base données is securized يعني مؤمنة sécurisée. نضال the other نضال. Your mic is open. If you don't mind, if you don't have a question, can you please deactivate it? Thank you. All right. Yeah, it's secure, right? It's securisé. We can make the client from the request from the client side. So let's do it from the server side. No problem. Let's do it from the server side. واش معناها نديروها في السيرفر سايد؟ الحاجه اللي سبيسيال هنا يختلف البراكتس ولا الباترن براكتس تاع Next.js. Here this is where it is different باسكو instead of creating a server component اللي عنده مواصفات ديفيرون. واش معناها ديفيرون؟ هما الحوايج اللي كوفريناهم باللي it needs to be running 24/7. فيه another kind of it's a technically different basically. حوايج اللي we don't need to actively care about. This is something special, at least for now. We don't need to think about it. We still need a backend route, API route. Generating the random number is not within the possibility or responsibility تاع book info. Well, first of all, I moved the function out of it, if that's what you mean. Even if it was inside, because of the way JavaScript handles يعني importing code the compiler understands these kind of things. Well, let me actually answer your question. The random number لو كان جينا نجينيريوه هنا ولا we decide on it هنايا في البوك info component اللي هو في الكلاينت use client يعني it's client side, then the client component would have to somehow know شحال كاين من book يكزيستي you know في our base données. تسمى it would need to select a random book based on شحال عندي من book. ما نقدرش I can't hard code it سينو راح نزيد كتابات واحد اخرين وما نوليش نسيليكسيوني عليهم you know. Yeah. How would you solve this? Here you make a request for the number of books باش تجينيري a random number. Yeah, so just make it the responsibility of the server. Okay, so let's make a backend route to handle this, getting this book. We do this. First things first is we talk to the documentation. We go to the documentation and can we ask it create backend route? We can't. So backend. No, route, defining routes. This is what I'm looking for. We recommend reading routing fundamentals. Yeah, this isn't what I'm looking for. Let's see this routing fundamentals. It's not here. Advanced routing, route segments. No, no, no. I can't see it here. Okay, then I will ask Google. Create backend route Next.js. API routes. This is what I'm looking for. Now, make sure هنايا that you are using not the pages router, which is the old router. You're using the new app router. Has new function. It's the newer one, newest version. Okay. Routing fundamentals. It took me back to this. So where am I searching? I should search for هنا. This is what I'm looking for, route handlers. They don't explain well. How would I know about that? Well, I would probably go in, we read one of these results, how to use Next.js API routes, creating API routes. Yeah, API routes here. So it's kind of complex. ماشي complex, it's hidden. So you would need to read some maybe answers that some people will look at like a video like this, API routes with Next.js 14, which is the current version. Let's go directly, since I know what we are talking about. Let's go directly to app router, routing, route handlers. Route handlers, they handle backend requests, well, API requests. So the way you create them, route handlers allow you to create custom request handlers for a given route using the web request and response API. So basically, an API route. They are defined in a route.js with a TypeScript file inside the app directory. Route handlers can be nested inside the app directory, similar to page.js and layout.js, but there cannot be a route.js file at the same route segment level as page.js. وش حبوا يقولوا say in order to create a route you just need to create a file اللي اسمه route anyway. كما the same way you need in order to create a page. For example, let's create more pages هنا. In order to create a page you just need to create a file called page. So if I create something like this, I don't know, test. Yeah, this is a test page. I create page.tsx and I fill it with just export const test. It returns just h1 test. Okay, this should allow me to have a new page. Perfect. So this is how easy it is to create a new route. With the same routing things we talked about apply. I can create a layout اللي تحيط بالroute تاعي. In fact, let's maybe do this right now. Layout.tsx, since we are touching on routing. Export const, let's call it just layout. Can call it anything, I think. We need to have children. The special thing about layout here, anything inside basically هذا البيج all pages اللي تحتها would be passed layout as children, so React children. So here what I can do here, for example, head ولا actual no, navigation, top navigation, now bottom navigation, footer, header. Need to export it. Well, it's working. Changing just styling باش تبان أفضل. Test بعد header footer everything works. If I create a sub route by creating a folder ونحط فيه page, it will also work. Sub test subtext text, let's call it. Subtext, what do I call it? Page.tsx. Real quickly, const page, const whatever. Boom, boom. We'll export. Okay. If I go to subtext, does it need to be case sensitive? Well, it needs to be case sensitive. So this is what sub page. Well, so it works. هذه layout is inherited from layout above. هذه concept we didn't explain last time. ما حبيت نفوت عليه بالخط دوكا. If I delete all the pages and I have دوكا نكري route, backend route, I create this layout, delete this layout. وهذه I also delete it, sure. I create a new file اسمه route.ts. Okay, this is our backend route. Of course, if we try to access it, we will get nothing because there is no code there. So let's see. Yeah, page that isn't working. Let's see how we create one. Um, this has no meaning for us right now. ثم, uh, we talk about this. In order to create a get route, باسكو كاين different types of course as we know HTTP methods كاين get, post, put, delete, patch. Now we care about get. Get is for getting data. That's what we need right now. Post is for creating data. Put, updating data. Delete for deleting data. Patch هما كاتبينها for partial update. May usually people just use one of these. Lets you replace yeah. You can use, for example, post in order to update data. We'll talk about this next session. All these mutating, changing, updating, deleting data stuff. For now, we just want to create a GET request. So if we go to our documentation, in order to create GET, export async function GET. Here, supported HTTP methods, all of these. This is an example of of a route. So export async function GET. They're making a request to an API, يعني database. We don't need to do that. I don't want to do that. I just need to get some data or return it. So this is how I do it. Nice. I can also watch a tutorial about that. So I just do this, export const get. I call it get. Here I will do the fetching of my books. Generate random number in range. All right, nice. I can also update. Okay, still working so far. In order to return the response, I do this, return response.json. I want it to be returned in the form of JSON. What other things do I have? Doesn't matter. Okay, JSON. Everything seems to be working. So in here, I am going to just do a normal API call. This refresh book, I want it to be async, to be able to do an API call. I'm going to use fetch, the fetch API, which is, I recommend using it. It's better than TypeScript. Well, not better than Axios, but for Next.js, it has some optimizations built in, like caching and memoization that we want to use. That's why we use the fetch API. They expand it with other features. The special thing about routing is that we can, since we are making a request to the same domain, this localhost 400, when or when it is hosted راح تكون السيرفر نفس الدومين باسكو it's the same server. It's not an external backend, which is great. We can just do this. هنا الفيشي تاعنا هذا it's inside test. So now we can do slash test. And now inside we will have our book, const new book. We just need to transfer it, we'll transform it into an object from JSON. Then we put it inside our book. Okay, hopefully this is enough to work. Let's go back to our root domain. Okay, refresh this book, or have I? Yeah, I have set it up. Refresh. Oh, nice. Okay. So this specific one, just this one, is refreshing. The other ones are the same. Refreshing, refreshing. Okay, so I want to read Beloved نوح احنا مسلمين. Handmaid's Tale فيها امرأة. Wuthering Heights. Charles Dickens, I like it. Great Expectations, I like this guy. And 1984, good. All right, great. So this is good for us. It's working as we intended it to be. Okay, so we have a backend route right now. This is our backend route. Inside this backend route, we can do whatever we can possibly do in a backend route. So it's basically, if you've done backend development before, This is a backend route. Do whatever you want. The only thing that's kind of special about it is it doesn't have state. So if you save, for example, if you save something here, I think if you do something like memory will 0. This is to test whether I can uh, increment this memory every time. Let's do this. ومعدل to console log memory. Well, just so I know, est-ce que cane state will I know? What does it mean, cane state? We'll talk about that later. I make a request, memory 1, another request, memory 1, many requests, many requests. Oh, it's updating. That's weird. It shouldn't. Okay. Then this one, is it export? Let's see this one. Defaults to auto. Um, all right. I think this because this concept he has stateless functions, meaning they every time you call them, you're calling a new actual version, let's say, of them. I think either it is it was replaced in the new app router because I've been using Next.js since the pages router, the one I showed before, or it's something I'm getting wrong. It's actually about deployments. So when you deploy this, it changes. Yeah, it becomes just like I said, serverless. It doesn't exist when you don't need it. بصح, since I'm running it locally inside this server that doesn't die and it doesn't turn off, then it's still it maintains a backend state. Uh, yeah, so let's just move on for now. How much time do we have left? We have around let's say 20 minutes. Okay, since we have everything we wanted to do, good, we're ahead of time, fetching data and backend routes. When it comes to backend routes, since we can't, this is what I've written, since we can't or shouldn't run server-side code on client components, like we mentioned before, parce que it reveals some security flaws. It reveals some, yeah, it's a security flaw. We need to create a backend route, and we can do that with Next.js, and we have done that. Okay, so Hadi, when it comes to making requests to our own server, what about making requests to other people's APIs? This is our own API, other people's API. What about that? Let's take a random, for example, Google Books API. Hopefully it is open. Integrate with Google Books repository. Get started. I just want the API, what's it called? Documentation. Books. Google Books API documentation. Google Books. Uh-huh. No, I don't care. Google API /off/books. Oh, off, no. Open API. Okay. This is an example request. So let's open that. We'll see what they're asking for. Okay, I'm getting books. By the way, this is an extension on Chrome that allows you to format JSON data when you get it back on the server or on the browser. So basically, I'm getting an array of items. It has multiple items. Let's look at the form of one item. It contains this volume info, of course, this other information like the ID or whatever. This is what I'm looking for. A title, authors, well, the author, sometimes they have multiple. The author, description, since they don't have a review, I'll just use the description instead. And this image, does it have an image? Image. Access info, text snippet. No, it doesn't have an image. Let's try another one. This one has an image. Preview link. Inside image links, it has a thumbnail. Let's look at this thumbnail. Okay, it's small, ugly, but yeah, it is small. But let's make do with it right now. And have been working test you just using another person's API. We're using Zama, not an advanced API, because there is no such thing. May this from the very ugly API. We can use it in one of two ways. We can use it in well, on the browser, not the browser, in our server-side component, which is here, page, here. And now we're getting a random book. Now we want to get maybe one, and now we're getting three random books from our book library. Maybe we get another three random books from the what's it called library, Google library. Okay, so how do we do that? We first need to get this info. So we just use the fetch API again. On the server side, we can, when it comes to our own database, some stuff that exists on our server, we can just use this one, يعني access directly كما رانا نديرو هنا, books. So when it comes to external APIs, we use this fetch. Now we can use it on the backend. It is optimized. For example, if I make this request, the request special thing about it is that it's not randomized. يعني you will rarely get a new result, except maybe يعني Google Books aren't often updated, aren't يعني مش updated every millisecond. So I can tell my server to save on space. Listen, I want you to save header result the I get from here. Save it for me for every for a day or for an hour. I don't need new books every for millisecond. I want them every hour. Check if there is a new book from this array. Next.js does this by default using the fetch by expanding with actual building on top of fetch API behind the scenes. So right now, if I do fetch, by default, it will cache the result for I think 60 seconds, something like that. I can change this behavior using this object, param object, using, for example, the keep alive. No, not this one. Let's actually check. We go to the documentation, the data fetching page, and we check here caching data. Force cache, this is the default. I'm looking for revalidating data. Now this one, next I'm telling it to revalidate every 3600 seconds. So this is every hour, at most every hour. I can change that however I need. And now I'm just going to do every hour. Next, revalidate 3600. اوكي هكذا برك باش ما نزعفش جوجل و they ban my IP par exemple. I'm telling them yeah, just keep it chill, just hit them up every hour at most يعني otherwise use the same data every time. Okay, so I'm going to use this await const Google Books. Their shape is ugly, so I will use TypeScript again to understand their shape. I'm going to do Google Book. It would be better لو كان نقدر نلقى في الانترنت. معليش, let's learn how to use Google Book. So if we enter here راح نقابل لي كاين items. So items اللي هي array of objects. Object includes volume info midley autofilled. This is exactly what I want. So inside volume info, we have authors. We have authors, which is an array. Description, which is a string. It's somewhere here. It's I don't know where. Here, description, for example. Image links, etc. So what I'm going to do here, type, okay. I'm going to tell my code, believe this Google Books, when you get it, also when you turn it into JSON dot, you turn it into an object that I can use, it will be of type Google Book. Okay, perfect. So what I want here, I do the same get random subarray. I use it here. Get random subarray Google Books dot items 3 map. I need 3 books. Okay, does this work? Boom. I need the title. What else? Let me fix this error. Initial load book. I need author, review, image. Author. I'll just get the first one from the array that they give me. The review with the image. Right? Everything working. I close this. Tuck. Okay. Will it work? Am I getting errors? Yes, I am. Invalid src prop. Host name. Wait. As we said for I think second session, Next.js likes to optimize our images. So I will tell it, hey, this is where I am getting my images from. Let me first figure it out. I'm getting my images. Well, Google is getting their images from, well, it's hard to tell actually. Books.com slash. So it's very complex, huh? And I will do my best to optimize it. I go here and I write this. هذا البارتي I don't need. So I just them left. نخدم HTTPS protocol HTTPS hostname books.google.com port I don't know, default one I guess. Path name slash books slash content. بعدها I don't know. بعدها علامة استفهام. Okay, let's try this. Does it like it? كعجب الحال. Cannot read properties of undefined reading thumbnail. parce que thumbnail خطرات ما تكزيستيش. Sometimes we don't have this. وش احنا normalement I look at the documentation properly ونعرف وش هما الايتمز اللي خطرات ما يكونوش كاينين. انا I will resolve this شغل بطريقة ندير غير placeholder basically yes. I will resolve it the inefficient way. It's getting each image هنا. Okay. How do I disable this actually? I don't need you to optimize images for this route. Parce que it might be complicated. Yeah, I'm using lots of hacky solutions. If it's إذا ما سمعليش, I will find another API. ولا another API. No, I'll do another hack image. Wow. it's not pretty ما معليش. دوكا it's working as you can see. شو the first three books تاعنا بعد three last books تاع جوجل. Here's the first one. Cliff notes on Kay's flowers for Algernon. Very ugly. ما يتبعوش بزاف الفورمات تاعي يعني. But it is true. هادو كامل by Daniel Keys. باسكو أنا في السيرش كويري تاعي راني نحوس تاع Daniel Keys. If you can see here in authors لازم يكون كاين الاسم Keys. That's why. لو كان نحيه maybe it will be better. Let me try to remove it actually. باسكو I don't know how to actually get زعما random books from Google API. We don't have to time for that. Let's actually get books اللي يهمونا. For example على Next.js. And well, perfect. Next.js cookbook, Next.js mastery, Next.js quick start guide. دوك هادو الكتابات ديجا I don't know ولاو يجوني صامتين مقارنة بهادو. راني نحب نتعلم Next.js مانيش حاب نقرا like a bunch of novels. Actually, it would be nice to read some of those. But let's yeah. Okay, this text is too long. I should minimize it. يعني using some JavaScript magic. Maybe I should. Maybe I can do it with the help of AI. Do we have time for that? No, we don't. عندنا 9 دقائق. Okay. Mais le principe still remains. This now is accomplishing what I want, except the fact that شغل دوكا الكتابات اللي راني نجيبهم غير من الباز دوني تاعي تسمى كي راني ندير هكذا راهم يروحوا. How can I resolve this? I can actually do something اللي يحسن لي الكود تاعي. Since هذه الحاجة Google Books je sais pas what else هذه الفetch request actually this specifically راهو ديما راح نعاودو ثاني في الباك اند يعني في الباك اند راوت تاعي I can with the beauty of Next.js I can just create for example في الداتا تاعي نكري new folder نسميه fetchers ولا third party fetchers هذوما third party fetchers they fetch data from other APIs so Google fetch from Google Books too long of a name ما معليش I have const fetch from Google Books book اسمه ماشي بالاي اس بي ان just random fetch from Google Book const books ولا data and I put this here I have this full request هنا do I want to return all the books ولا غير شغل clean data I think I want to return clean data in the form of an array of books I will tell TypeScript that I want that here ومن بعد I will do it needs to be a promise of okay don't focus too much with the TypeScript it is simple واش راني نقول للTypeScript هي هذه الفانكشن we don't focus too much on the syntax يعني remembering it نسيت تفهموا برك الكونسيبت I'm telling this function باللي it returns ولا I'm telling TypeScript باللي this function should return a promise of course because I want to do a wait a promise اللي when it is resolved this is what's meant by this when it is resolved it should give me an array of books ودوكا it is helping me it's telling me باللي my function the type تاعها ماهوش واحد من هادو تسمى it must return a value I will return a value may this value as we know is of type Google Book where is it Google Book this راح ندير كوبي باش نقي الحالة كوبي no it's of type Google Book nice return data it's telling me باللي Google Book اللي راني نرجعو راهو missing things from my data type باسكو راني حاب نحول transform data into book type so I will do this where I'll let it figure it out. Title by the author. Yeah. Tick, 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 tick. Author. More TypeScript to help us. Author. Review. Well, actually, we should, for author, let's do something smart, which is this. We make the full list of authors. Description, image. Otherwise, a placeholder. Okay. Uh, return data, instead return books. Boom. Inside here, no longer need this. Instead, for Google Books, I want to use my function and I will start exporting. Export. Fetch from Google Books. Awaits. Fetch from Google Books. Import it. Will it work? Hopefully. If it doesn't work, بهدلت روحي. Let's see. I have an issue. Cannot read properties of undefined reading title. So sometimes the title doesn't exist. هذا وش حاب يقول لي. ولا title ماهوش في volume info. No, that's rare. Otherwise, no title. Are you happy? Mm, no. Cannot read properties of undefined. Okay, let's print what's inside data. Console log data. Then I will decide. Refresh. Inside data كاين هذا كامل. Volume info. Volume info. I am doing our book.volume info. I should instead. It will take a long time to debug. So since it was working, I will check directement هنا. هنا. هنا اللي كان مشكل. Parce que since I have the book properly Google Books ما نحتاجش ندير كامل هذا التمسخير. نقدر ديريكتومون نعطيلو جوجل بوك تاعو. البوك تاعو ماشي جوجل بوك. باسكو هنا راني ديجا ندير الخدمه تاع نبدل الداتا فورمات فروم الوان اللي يخدموا بها جوجل تو ذا وان اللي نخدموا بها حنا. اوكي سو are you working now? Are you happy? Author title, remove these two. No. Page title. Win. Okay, book.title. Okay, it's working Docker. I just need to update it في السيرفر في الباك اند راوت. ومادام عندنا فانكشن وعليها اللي خدمنا بهذا الفانكشن نقدروا نروحوا to my backend route ونديروا هكذا. بون مانيش حاب نخدم بهذه anymore. I will comment it out. So for my book, individual book, I will get get random generate, not get random, fetch from Google Books. Wait, fetch from Google Books. This needs to be async. Okay. After I fetch, I will get, this is a list of books. So what I want here, one book at random from all this huge list of books. Okay, perfect. Now it should work. Boom, boom, boom. Yes, it's getting a random book. Isn't this beautiful? So do I want this book? Modern web applications with Next.js. I can read this huge description, elevate your Next.js mastery, comprehensive Next.js coverage, practical examples. Well, this looks like a good book. Dynamic trio for web developers who want to learn how to use React to Tailwind. Okay. ديجا عندي واحد كيما هكذا. I don't need it. Building React apps with server-side rendering. ديجا عندي. الانترفيس ماهيش مليحة، لازم ديما نعرف واش من نمبر راني فيه. Next.js handbook don't care. نمدو لي same book again randomly. Mastery sure. نلحقو mastery. بعدها let's say React TypeScript to Next.js. Okay, I like this one. It's in Italian. I can give it to my is it Italian or Spanish? To my Italian or Spanish friends. So you might be asking, oh, this is very important. You should be asking it. Uh, isn't this too much؟ يعني معناش نجيبو هكذا كامل لا ليست تاع البوكس تاع جوجل every time. As I said before, no, that's not the case parce que we are uh, getting it only once an hour. دوكا عندي هذه البوك list in memory. It's maintained by Dex.js. It will remain for an hour. It will just be fetched from memory, which is much faster. I can make maybe this request even more optimized, for example, by asking for more better filters, etc. But that's not what we're focusing on. For now, this works. We made two types of queries. واحدة to an external API, which used caching. واحدة to our own API with our own data. What is the ideal way to fetch just 50 books? Then if we needed, we ask for another 50 different books. So what you're asking for, yeah, well, we ask for 50 books and we work مع هذوك ال 50 books. بعدها let's say we have a flag ولا we have a button هنا. We can just have a button هنا اللي يقول لنا fetch. We shouldn't give this functionality to users. To we should manage it ourselves. Mais let's say باللي well, in order to refresh بلا ما تكون فاتت هذيك الساعة, we can actually set a flag, for example, set a special flag اللي يقول للفتش تاعنا now I want you to force revalidate ولا force a new get new data. How do we do that though? We should be able to do it with the fetch settings. So let's look at the documentation. It's inside this. On-demand revalidation. This is what we're looking for. Data can be revalidated by the on-demand by path, revalidate path, or by cache tag. So revalidate tag inside the server action or route handler, or by cache tag. So basically وش قصدهم by tag. For example, I can إذا عندي بزاف API routes اللي يفتش you books from different places, like for example Amazon Books, if there is such a thing, Google, I don't know, Fnac, other USTHB books. وراني حاب at once, for example, كاش ما خرجوا كتاب جديد راني حاب ولا كتابات بزاف جدد at a certain time, نقدر I set a tag نسميهم كامل book fetching. ها هما التاج هنا قالوا لنا tags, نديرها book fetching. بعدها I revalidate every request اللي عندها هذا التاج. So we were talking about how to revalidate only one path. Let's check how to do that. Revalidate path. I can call this function revalidate path, نمدلها الباث ونقولها which type it is. Is it a page or is it a layout? Does not return. Okay. Can I use it, however, to revalidate a API request? Let me check. Okay. Whether the use course, integrity, headers. Is there any property هنا اللي تقدر تعاوني? Nothing. Okay, so let's try revalidate path. سوا layout سوا page سوا undefined. Okay, it doesn't matter. Void. Okay. إذا مشات هذا الريكوست then it's not an ideal way to test bien sûr mais it should be able to it should give me واسمها uh, confirmation باللي it is refreshing revalidating. Okay. Okay, when I click refresh it shows revalidating. So if I remove revalidate, does it do that? Mm. It's no longer doing that. سما كي راني ندير هنا refresh this book bon ديجا نحيت console log. I'm not sure even if this shows it يعني revalidate باسكو capable يفوت على هذه الفانكشن. So it's not calling the fetch request, it's just doing this work ولا something like that. So how would I test it? I think it would be too complicated to test. ديجا راهو خلاص الوقت. I just want you to know بلي it is possible to revalidate ولا to basically tell it specifically بلي دوكا مانيش حابك تستنى any other second. I want you to get me a new set of books ولا it can be any other thing. For example, I want you to get me new data from this API, updated data, without waiting for this revalidation اللي تدي ساعة. It's I think using this revalidate path it should work. They say بلي it works. You can also use في هذيك الأخرى revalidate tags. But yeah, I will confirm or let you know. I'm 80% certain. Okay, this is the end actually for what we wanted to do. We even did one thing extra here, getting from third-party APIs. What's left for us technically is to go through to change this data, mutating data. For example, je sais pas, setting it as our favorite in our local database, par exemple, ولا you can imagine all kinds of functionalities. For example, نبدلوا هذا الديسكريبشن ما يكونش عندنا الآخرين. So maybe setting it as favorite, liking it, uh, saving it to our personal library, for example, where we can write our own opinion about it, things like that. These require mutating data وthey might very well require أنه we have global state أننا نبعثوا state ما بين components ولا actually we keep it within the app. We'll talk about how we achieve both of these things in the next session. For now, since we got to a good point in our progress where we can, using this code, create something very good, very usable, we will be doing quick recap. All right. Me first, talking about the challenge. Session 2's challenge I didn't send parce que I think we weren't in a good point, you know. We were in the middle of learning a bunch of concepts. If they were hard to reproduce, so we didn't reproduce them. هذا الأولى. Now that we are in a good position, we create something useful. As you can see, this is kind of useful. You know, you can imagine if you think hard enough about a product اللي يخدم بهذه functionalities, you can make something useful. And I made this. It's pretty decent. I choose the books I like. I just need to improve the API requests that I make, but I always get fresh books, for example. Okay. So ديجا نقدروا par exemple another thing نقدروا before even learning about fetching data وهذو mutating data و global state في next session نقدروا par exemple we have an input هنايا وهذاك الانبوت واش يدير يزيد برك string للسيرش تاعي هنايا يزيد string في اليوز ستيت بعدين نولي نخدم به في ماي واسمو ماي ريكويست باسكو ماي اي بي اي راوت I recommend يعني of course we can't cover everything في session of an hour and a half عليها راني شغل حتى أنا شغل شوية I try to get you in the habit of reading the documentation for anything you need, Googling whatever you need, or reading الآخر. It's something that is necessary, ماشي that you should do. Okay. هنا we can request, get the request object هنايا وفيه راح نلقاو الداتا تاعنا تسمى we can par exemple say بلي we want books about Next.js or React or cooking whatever. Okay. A quick recap. What we did في this session وين كنا وين ولينا. كنا في تعلمنا كيفاش نخدموا application تاع Next.js. وش معناها application؟ معناها غير نجيبوا project تاع Next.js ونولو يبان في البراوزر تاعنا. تعلمنا ثاني باللي Next.js كيفاش نخدموا بالرياكت، كيفاش نخدموا فيه components تاع React. تعلمنا about React و server about server و client components. وكي لحقنا اليوم we had two things to cover. الحاجة الأولى اللي هي fetching data, actually fetching data. مش هيك شغل we pretend that we are fetching data by شغل refreshing the page completely. And about backend routes باسكو باش نجيبوا data يعني getting يعني requesting data ولا fetching data. Yeah. We need a backend route وين نجيبوا هذيك الداتا سواء يكون تاعنا تعلمنا كيفاش نديروا هذه الحاجة نقدموا backend routes تاعنا ولا يكون تاع third party for example Google Books. We did both, right? And what we achieved with them هي an application اللي شغل يتبدلوا parts of it. هذه حاجة كانت مهمة. parts of it كما هذا ال first book يتبدل والكتابات الآخرين يبقاو the same. Next.js cookbook هذا يبقى the same. نبدل هذا والآخرين يبقاو the same. Yeah. All of this in the Next.js way, meaning it's efficient. It's once you get over هذا الواحد learning curve اللي راكم فيها دوكا, it will become شغل second habit كيفاش تخدموا بهذا الفلسفي تاع Next.js. توليو تخدموا so much faster. For example هذه الحاجة اللي درتها أنا, it would require me أنني I create a separate backend repo. I install packages فيها, I host it, جو سي با كامل هاد الصوالح. دوكا نو غير تك 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 بالخف نقدر تك 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 نزيد بازوني شغل I can get to a working product so much faster. These are the two functionalities we achieved. This is the final product, let's say, current product that we have. This button still does, I think nothing, does it? No, it updates everything. Where? وي update everything باسكو ما بدلناش فيه. So it still works. It's still شغل كاين هذا button اللي refresh everything, refresh the whole page. So this is interesting. If I don't like any of these books plus ما نبدل individually I refresh. Okay. So yeah, does that cover your question, Hisham? Okay. We'll talk about the challenge once I get confirmation. About the challenge, like I said, challenge that session 2. Yeah, I will send it I will send the since it is in a usable state, let's say. I will update the code to a GitHub repo where you can download it, whether you can fork it, you can do whatever you want with it. Maybe if you want, you can inspire from it to read it. Whether you can go through create your own project. Although the way actual challenges I'm thinking about them I'm planning to do them في هذو challenges تاع day to day حنكوفريو برك الحاجة اللي درناها في هذا السيشن ولا في هذه الحالة two sessions. Maybe for the final challenge I think it will be much more interesting باسكو حنبنيو شغل حاجة اللي kind of فيها كامل تاع ال 5 days وراح تكون more challenging actually instead of just مراجعة. It will be something nice. It's personal project. Ouais. Quick walkthrough of the code. We have the root product page اللي هي هذه. We have the root page. هذه ديفينينا this page هي الروت page basically هي اللي جاية في السلاش. وش فيها؟ فيها it's a server component اللي gets a random it's a helper function actually. It just chooses a random sub-array تاع books. So we care about this. It gets a bunch of Google books from Google using this function اللي shared مع الباكند route تاعنا. So you can read it later. So we get the books from Google Books, and then we display them using this book info component اللي دوكا ولا a client rendered component باسكو it needed to have state. يسحق يولي يتابديتا وقت يتابديتا not at first يعني مع الاول الداتا تاعنا راهي تجي من السيرفر كومبوننت normally في الفيرست ريندر تصرا ديما في السيرفر unless we specify ourselves باللي تصرا ما تصراش في السيرفر مي وعلاش تصرا في السيرفر باسكو it's more efficient نبعثوا لليوزر HTML بعدين نبعثوا له الجافا سكريبت باش يولي يقدر يدير other things with it. This is called hydration by the way, which you will read later تحيروا بعد باسكو it's a complex word hydration. For a simple concept hydration هي adding JavaScript to HTML CSS code later باش يولي عندنا functionalities كيما هادو use state ولا event listeners كيما on click, right. تما عندنا هذا الباتن اللي when a user clicks it رانا نديرو fetch request هي just an API request to our own backend route اللي راهو defined at /test using هذه الفورمة تاع تسمي الراوت تسمي الفايل route. We're getting the book, turning it to JSON و putting it in memory. هكذا this is a clean nice clean way, nice clean code. Okay. Our backend route, in order to define a backend route, basically a get backend route, وش يقدر يدير backend route, it can handle multiple methods. It can handle get, post, put, update, update, get, put, post, patch, delete, even other ones, options, I think, whatever. تسمى نقدروا نزيدوا other ones هنايا export const put which we will do later. مي حنا we care about get like we said for now. At first we were getting the books from our own internal let's say database اللي هي just an object. بعد decidينا no البوكس تاع جوجل are more interesting. تسمى ولينا we get them and we reuse the same function. تسمى this is something اللي special مع JavaScript شغل ماشي JavaScript React Next.js. We can use this code في a component to make it much faster to directly in a component instead of هنا doing fetch و je sais pas quoi getting through this proxy. ديروها ديريكتومون هنايا ال API request. We can use في هذه ال API request اللي في ال server component. We can put API keys, we can put anything اللي زعما secure باسكو this line of code ولا this code اللي يكون هنايا will only run on the server. It's a server component. Déjà, we can assure that it only runs on the server, I think, by doing this server only. So it's best to put it هنايا because that's a server component. We put it here, import server only. This assures belief our browser, our client doesn't run backend code. Okay, for our route, it's simple. It gets a request object تسقط فيه everything you need. البادي وش بعث الآخر الكوكيز اللي تبعثوا ال request params whatever everything. So we're fetching this, then we're choosing a book at random from using a random number from an array. We're returning it in the form of JSON right here. Okay, we're using that. So that's basically all we did. Simple but powerful. Right. I will send the challenge text later. I think it will include just using the functionalities that I mentioned. You can choose to, for example, expand on the code I sent في ال GitHub repo. ولا if you want to continue زعما تبنوا your own thing, write your own repo اللي يكون فيها تاع Next.js وتخدموا بهذه الفيتشرز. That's also acceptable. Maybe it's even better for in terms of learning. Details for the challenge will be sent in a message. I will hopefully send it Swaliuma Swa tomorrow morning. Uh, that's all. I hope it was beneficial for everyone. You had fun. It's now 12 p.m. So thanks for or midnight. Thanks for sticking with me. And yeah, I wish you all a good night, a good Sahara.